I didn't know we needed my face. Restart. What's up, guys? It's Max from Mountain Movement. Today we are going to be going over the Transition Patrol and Spire. In this video, we're going to be breaking them down. I'm going to throw some of my opinions on them, and you're going to get some in-depth looks on what makes these two bikes click. So, we're going to start with the Transition Patrol today. This specific one is mine, and it is a large blueberry aluminum, and that leads me right into all patrols are aluminum. The patrols are 29 in the front, 27.5 in the rear. That means they are mullets, so business in the front, party in the back, and that's exactly how this bike rides. It's a really fun bike. I would categorize it as a free ride bike. I don't necessarily think it's an enduro style bike. It's fast, it really is, but the bike really wants to play. It stays in a good range of the travel, especially in my setup with the Super Deluxe with the Megneg. This bike is really responsive. It pops, but it can also take the chunkiest lines and make them feel like green. Before I jump into the technical aspects as far as specs and things like that and build kits, quick disclaimer, this is my personal bike. I got the frame up build, so this is kind of more of a one-off style. This is not a build kit. They do not come from the factory like this, but we can still get a good idea about how patrols look on the floor, how they ride. This one's just tailored to me, so let's get into it. So, the Patrol, very versatile in your adjustments. First off, it has a flip chip with a high and low setting. The high setting will get you the bike with a shorter wheelbase, making the bike a lot more playful, a little bit more fun to just have a great day and rip on the bike. Putting in the low setting slackens the bike out, makes it a little longer, better for control, a lot more tailored to racing. So, like I said, this bike is a shred sled that's super fun to play on, but if you want to, you can also race it. While we're also in the middle, I want to touch on the shock length. This bike can be a setup as a 170-170, a 160-170, or a 160-160, depending on your choice. I want to touch on the shock. The shock length is 205 millimeters, but since this bike is versatile, like I was talking about, if you want to set it up as a 160 bike, it's a 60 millimeter shock stroke, and if you want to set it up to a 170, it's a 65 millimeter shock stroke. So, in the high setting, the chainstay length is 440, but if you want to put it in the low setting, the chainstay length goes to 442. If you thought the adjustability just was in the middle of the bike, you are sadly wrong. This bike is tailored for any use, anything you want to do, and that's what makes these bikes so special. So, with the front of the Patrol, you can do a 170 fork like I was touching in the back. That is how mine is set up, 170-170. And the head tube angle in the high setting is 63.5 degrees, making this bike pretty slack. And if you put it in the low setting for a little bit slacker, this bike has a 63 degree head tube angle. So even slacker, making this bike very long and very stable on the descents. Another cool point to touch on with this bike is the head tube is a 56 millimeter zero stack top and bottom. What that means for this bike is you can run pretty much all DH forks, making this bike another layer of shred sled. Another cool thing is then you can have reach adjust headsets and angle sets much easier with the top and bottom symmetry. This is the Transition Spire, the big brother of the Patrol, maybe the cousin. They're pretty similar, and we're going to get into why. The Spire is a full 29, long travel, enduro, race bike, free ride bike. Pretty much can be anything you want. Just like the Patrol, these bikes are extremely customizable. So they do one thing maybe a little bit better than the other, but you can kind of tailor them to your liking. This bike is a little bit more enduro race, something you would need for big downhill days that you also need to pedal up around the parks. So a pretty versatile bike. It comes standard 170 and 170, unlike the Patrol, 10 mil up front and rear. And this bike and we're going to get into some technical aspects so you can see the difference. Quick disclaimer, again, this one's Bo's bike. He has all types of parts. It's actually mulleted, which we'll get into. So there is specific builds kits. This is not one from the factory, but we're going to give you the factory specs as far as geometry goes. For the chainstay lengths on this size large, in the high setting is 446, and in the low setting it is 448. So this Spire in particular is a size large in the aluminum in the raw color. Very cool color. Quick throw in there. It's very, very raw. Quick highlight, these also have a flip chip, a high and low setting, to make this bike longer for even more stability, because this is already a very, very long bike, even in the high setting. The shock length was 205 millimeters. It is the same for the Spire. So if you have two of these, you can switch your rear shock for affordability. But conversely, from the Patrol, this bike comes 170 from the factory. So it is a 65 millimeter stroke for 165 or for 170 millimeters of travel in the rear. If you want to go down to 160, which is the option for the Spire, it is 60 millimeter stroke. This bike is also extremely customizable, just like Patrol, but it is a little bit more flipped, and we're going to keep getting into why that is the case. So let's continue. So here's where the Spire separates itself in lengthwise from most bikes on the market today, and especially the Patrol. In the high setting of this bike, it's a 63-degree head tube angle, very slack. And when you put it in the low for a longer bike and even more stability, it drops down to a 62.5-degree head tube angle. That is a very slack bike. That's slacker than pretty much all downhill bikes on the market, or right at where a lot of downhill bikes are on the market. My current downhill bike does not have anywhere near that degree of slackness. So this bike is very out there. That front tire is very far in front of the bike for added stability, and speed is the game. This bike is needed, is best when it's pointed downhill. And you can see from the Geo, as far as head tube angles go, that that's what it's best at. So just like Patrol, it's got a 56 millimeter zero stack headset in the front, top and bottom, meaning this bike is dual crown compatible. This is another great bike to throw on a DH fork if you want it to be maybe a DH park kind of hybrid rig where it's got big travel fork in the front, and it still can kind of pedal. Maybe you put a dropper post on it. I don't know. I'm not really into that kind of things. I like my bike to be kind of specific. So yes, very slack up front. Awesome bike if that's what you're into. If you're wanting to cross country ride this bike, probably not a good idea. Let's keep moving on. So for the reach of this bike, it is a 485 in the high setting and a 480 in the low. So just a little bit above the Patrol. Both of these bikes that we are comparing again are larges, so we wanted to give you the most accurate comparison. That is with a 40 mil stem though, so keep that in mind. Both of them do have 40 mils. That is, if you wanted to shorten that, you can go down to 35, 31 if you're doing 31.8 handlebars. So talking about the length of this bike, it's very long. In the high setting, the wheelbase is 1287. That's 1,287 millimeters of length on this bike. Put in the low setting, it's 1289. So this bike is very, very long, very lumbering. That is with the full 29-inch setup. Something to note is you can mullet this bike. I'm going to get into it with both bikes, but they both have very, very low bottom brackets. You can't really run over a 165 millimeter crank. Something to keep in mind. If you are looking for that mullet, it might be better to go with the Patrol. But Mr. Bosov here, he did not agree. He said we can do it on the Spire, and he did, and he loves it. So just some food for thought on that. That's all I need to say about that. So. That was the comparison between the Transition Patrol and Spire. Comment down below which one you think is better for you and why, because you have to have validation to back up your opinion, in my opinion, and that's a validation, and that's science. T-7. Thanks guys for listening. Tune in next time. We got some really cool stuff going on. We'll have some more updates on Howler for you pretty soon. Hopefully this weather breaks up and we can get some stuff moving a little bit quicker. But thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.